I'm learning like what it means to be a Black person in different places in the world, because I only have context for like what it means to be a Black American.
Jamz Supernova, and this is Between the Lines. It's a podcast where I get to sit down with artists that I love and admire and dig deep into the process of how they made a song, who they were and where they were when they wrote it. And on the couch, I've got Yaya Bey.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi.
Got my pen, got my notebook, I'm ready to dive in. And I've said it a couple of times recently in this season, and I think it's been a real sort of period of reflection for me, tapping back into the artists and the songs that I really enjoyed championing, at a different chapter in my career when I was on BBC Radio 1 Extra. And you specifically come up for me because it was around 2021 lockdown, real lockdown times, maybe even late 2020. And like we were doing so many interviews on Zoom, but it was almost like I was in this grind of like find an artist, reach out, love the artist, bring them on the show. And because we were doing things on Zoom, everyone felt so much more closer to get. I could drop you a DM and be like, love your music, want to come on the show, and then within a week you're on the show.
Yeah.
And I just remember like really there was something about that time that I really enjoyed, that digging, that finding, that supporting artists. Felt like I was working in real time. And I guess for you, the movements in your career kind of happened around that lockdown time.
Yeah.
Did it feel like this, when you think about the concept of time in lockdown and your career flourishing at the same time, what was that like?
It was a special time for someone like me who I'm an introvert in a lot of ways, and like so often it feels like you have to like go network and like smooze and rub elbows to like have a career. And it didn't happen like that for me because there was no smoozing and we were all inside. And so it was kind of like my time to shine, because it was like, okay, I can just rely on the music, because I had been like trying to make a career happen for myself. And before lockdown, I was kind of like on the outside of like these pockets of people, and I couldn't find my way in because like, again, I'm not a smoozing kind of person. So it was like, this was my time to just let the music smooze for me.
Yeah, smooth it did.
So it was great for my career. Obviously, like, it was a pandemic and that was not great.
Of course.
But yeah, it was very helpful for someone like me.
In that time from now, you've had 3 albums and 2 EPs. And I was wondering whether I sit here and say, oh my God, the work ethic, that's amazing. Like you're just, the catalogue, the work ethic. Or am I missing the nuance of what it means to be a working artist in today? How much you have to work to survive as an artist?
I think it's like really nuanced. I love to write songs. I've been in this groove of making music nonstop for like 5 years. So I'm in a groove. So in a way it's coming naturally to me, but also like there's a necessity there too, because no matter how much you work, like there's so many people you've got to pay. There's, you don't make, it's not an ethical or equitable business, the music industry. And so there's a necessity to keep producing, but also I've been in this groove of producing. And so it's coming natural. There's a flow there. It's a bit of both.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you pointed that out, because it's sort of like, sometimes you're like, oh my God, you made so much. But also, I think now, especially post-pandemic, the veil has been lifted, actually, what it takes to be an artist that is living off of their art is actually so much more than just the art. There's so much more you have to do going on the road, the volume of music that you have to put out, but then also when the maths doesn't always maths. You know, volume doesn't always mean profit when there is, you know, like you said, so many people to pay, and there's a team around you, and everyone's got to eat. So I think it's really important that that veil is lifted. And that's one of the things what I was initially drawn to you was some of the writing and the not just music, but some of the mediums that you used to talk about different layers of society. And we had a really interesting conversation on air, which was about the idea of like how we see the hood, and how, you know, how so much is taken from the hood, you know, culturally, but how the hood's still the hood and not much is given back to it, you know, sort of take. And I just I loved your thinking around, you know, society, poverty, blackness, and misogyny. Who gave you space to question the world in that way, or what triggered that, you know, from a young Yaya?
I don't think anyone ever gives you space. You know, I think you want to survive, and so you make the space for yourself. Because no one's gonna give you space to like disrupt the things that they benefit from. So you have to take the space. The motivation for me is always just like survival, and my survival, making a dent in things, like the things that I want to see happen, the change that I want to see, or none of that's going to happen in my lifetime. Obviously, I can make some things better for like myself, my immediate community. You know, you just make a dent. Each generation makes a dent. But just because I'm not going to see it in my lifetime doesn't mean that I'm not going to shake the table. So sometimes it's taking the space is coming from the need for survival. Taking the space sometimes is coming from rage. Depends on the day, what I'm going through.
Yeah. And what made the process of writing this particular album different? You know, what was if the album before, Remember Your North Star, was almost like a thesis, in a sense, what was different about Tenfold?
I usually approach albums like thematically. But after North Star, my life had changed so much. My dad died. North Star was successful, so it put me on the road. So I was on the road more than I had ever been before. I had to make more decisions. I had to manage the fruits of my labor and the consequences of my labor. And I had to do that all in real time while like shifts were happening in my life. And so I didn't have time to make a thematic album. I just made an album as I lived my life. The highs, the lows, because it wasn't just lows, there were, you know, highs too. And I was just making songs about life. And then I put it together where North Star was like, again, like you said, like a thesis. It was like super meticulous, super thematic. And I was in a different place when I made North Star. I was in somewhat of like despair. And though like, you know, there had been a death and that shifted a lot of things, I wasn't in despair.
Why were you in despair?
Everything in my life was shifting in this way where I had to decide to grow up. You know, I had like a bad breakup and I had to like really face and take responsibility for the ways that I play a part in my own misery. but like even that like comes with this sort of sadness and I guess a grief, because all of the ways that I used to behave, or the way that I knew myself to be, I had to find a new person to be that wasn't a culprit in my misery. And that's not like an overnight process. Like you kind of have to fall apart to do that. And so I was like falling apart during the North Star era of my life. And so I was sad. I was deeply sad. I had to recall things, and because like, even to like know why you do something, you gotta like
Remember the root of it.
yeah, and to change it. And so I was like examining things and feeling them, and yeah, I think I was in despair, and also I had no real evidence that I would make it to the other side, you know, because I had never dug that deep before. And sure, I had made it through lots of things, and so in theory, yeah, you've made it before, but I never went through like that time of my life was like it was dark, and it was dark for so long. It to get to North Star, that was like a 3-year period, you know, and 3 years is a long time to be in darkness. So I was, yeah, it was different. And when I made tenfold, I was on the other side of that.
You had the tools.
So I was a much more empowered person.
Even though another massive shift had happened.
Yeah, but it's different. Like a death is different than like what I went through in North Star was like I've got to find the strength to push through. North Star required action from me. When you grieve the loss of life, which is inevitable, we're all going to pass away and leave people to grieve us. And in that, that isn't a fight. There's some things that happen in life that you got to fight through, and there's some things in life that are just an experience that there's nothing left to do but surrender to it.
Yeah.
And what I was going through in tenfold that time is and I mean, and still now to this day is a practice of surrender, which doesn't require action from me. Just requires me to be with it.
And to, I always think of like in a kind of spirituality, Buddhism way, but obviously I think it's happening, and to be like aware of it, but to be present,
To witness
within it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a different process, and my task, or the thing that I needed to be active in, is the fruits of my labor, to continue on the path, like to live my life. And so I just had to try to do that. So it wasn't as dark of a space, because it was painful, but sometimes pain isn't always dark. So.
Yeah. And I think in the tone of the album as well, even though you are confronting things that are very much has happened, there is a kind of, it's more looking at it and confronting it and talking to it, rather than, I don't know, kind of that it's not, it doesn't feel heavy in sonically or in the way that you write, but there is this kind of it's what I would go to when I would need a pick me up. Some things you go to when you want to be in your feelings, but this is the kind of album where I want to accept that where I am is where I am, but I also want to be picked up through it. And I kind of think that's what the album, for me, the tone of of the album, this has happened, these things are happening, our rent is shit, you know,
Yeah.
my love is blossoming. You know, there's you know,
Yeah.
there's always there's duality. That's what I wanted to say. I mean, like the song that I chose was "I Love You, Beverly." And at the start of it, it feels like it could be a party record. It's,
Yeah.
you know, come on, baby, pass the blunt. You know, I miss that sticky stuff. Like it could be like, and even the production of it, you know, it's still kind of a funky, groovy record. And then it's, you know, how I've been on the run from like 5011 emotions. So there's the duality. Oh, we're partying, but we've all got we're in our shit, really.
Yeah.
Would you say that to be fair?
So, like, Frankie Beverly is like, I love him so much.
And that's for those that don't know.
He's the front man in Maze. And when I was in my 20s, so I'm a New York native, but when I was in my 20s, I moved to DC, and DC was like being gentrified at the time. So, and I like come from a gentrified city, and I was like, I want to like not be a part of the problem. I want to like find a way to be like invested in like helping people fight for the city back. I was so hopeful in my 20s. And so they had, I joined this organization called 1DC. And I went to like this meeting for it. And they played We Are One by Frankie Beverly. And I had heard this song so many times, but I had never heard it in this context. And I was like, wow, like, he has a way of writing like social commentary, but like to like these groovy songs that you can like dance to. And I was like so moved by it. And so I Love You, Frankie Beverly is like a song about capitalism. Cause I go on these rants all the time, like when I perform on my Instagram, and people are always like, shut up and just sing.
No, I love them though. I mean, that's like I said at the top of the interview. That's what drew me. I love the music, but what, you know, also drew me into you is your thoughts. I'm like, yeah, like school me.
I am like polarizing, I think. And so I was like, I'm gonna try to write this song about capitalism in a like way that if you don't know that's what I'm talking about, you don't know. And if you do know, you do know.
You call it like a shit sandwich, you know, like
Yeah.
in the middle shit, but on the outside it's like nice and fluffy bread.
Cause you know, or like that saying, like you put sugar in the cough syrup. Like I struggle with that. Like to be honest, especially every time I come to Europe, I played a show in Sweden last week, and I talk about the things I always talk about: capitalism, imperialism, Palestine, Congo, etc., etc. And this Swedish journalist wrote this article like, I lost the crowd by talking about the war and capitalism, and I don't think that I lost the crowd.
Yeah, and you lost her.
Yeah.
And but also, what's to lose the crowd? Is it that they're quiet? Is it that they're, you know, how much of the crowd? Like, you know, it's context, right? To say that you lost the crowd, and you know when you lost the crowd. You know when you've been on stage and it's like, I lost them, like that. So for that, what is the polarizing? Is it like is it because music's political, right? But people don't want it to be political.
And I go through this like confliction a lot. And like when I come to Europe, like I always leave like my spirit like broken, and then I have to like build myself back up, and then I come and I do it again. What am I like working to have a platform for if like And you know, like I'm not a millionaire. Like I'm a working class artist, so like I'm talking about the conditions that like I'm also living in.
Yeah.
I live in the imperial core, and I mean Europe is also the imperial core. The Western world is the imperial core. I think that there's like different etiquette about talking about like race, like here, like it's impolite to talk about race, and especially like in Europe, but like it's just as racist.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, the thing is, I think it's like a hidden. You know, it obviously depends where you go in Europe, but I think it's the idea of out of sight, out of mind. So if we don't talk about it, then it couldn't possibly be happening. Or just be the good immigrant, you know, just shush and work hard and assimilate. You know, there's so much, and it can be really like, and obviously, and also you came to Europe in quite a conflicting time. As we record this, you know, there's been race riots, the movement of the far right. But that, for me, is what makes voices like yours even more important. And if you're going to come to a Yaya Bey show and you don't want to hear about those things, then you shouldn't be coming, you know, to the show, because it's not for you then.
I appreciate that. That's not usually the sentiment I get.
I'm here for you.
It's not the sentiment I get. And it's really hard because, like, I always say, like, London and America are like each other in the upside down. Like, London is so much like America. Like, or America is so much like London, I think, because London is the mother. And when I come here, it reminds me of like racism in the South, but like this different, with like a different tone to it.
Yeah, covert.
Yeah, but it's
But
like
overt.
it's covert, but it's overt. I'm learning like what it means to be a Black person in different places in the world, because I only have context for like what it means to be a Black American, and I'm understanding like when you go to a different place and racism is a different way in the world, like these Black people have a different way of coping with this because this is the racism that they deal with every day, where I'm used to a different type of racism. So me and my ancestors, we've developed a certain way to cope with this style of racism. But because I'm not used to the style of racism here, I have no coping mechanisms. And so, you know, like you might come to America and be like, I have no idea how to deal with this because you don't have the coping mechanisms for it. And so it's not that you become desensitized, but in a way you become desensitized because to survive, but you wouldn't be desensitized to American racism because
I'm not used to it.
Yeah. And so I'm coming to Europe for like extended periods of time dealing with a style of racism that I have no coping mechanisms for. And so because I have no coping mechanisms for it, it's very pronounced for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like every day, like it's like psychological warfare here. You go to the airport or somewhere and the people don't want to talk to you. I mean, you're standing right in front of them and they're like, hello.
Yeah.
I don't know that style of racism. They're racist back home. Trust me, but I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, how do I respond to that?
Well, it's so interesting that you said that, because I definitely, when I started touring as a DJ, moving through airports is a very big indicator of how you be treated when you get on the other side. But, you know, I said the other day actually to my partner, it was around everything was kicking off across the country, race-wise, and we were sitting in my garden and we're chatting. And my friend was from Colombia, and I've been to Colombia quite a few times, but I don't know how to handle the racism there. And he's a mestizo, mixed Colombian man, and he's very well read, very well educated, And I felt like every time I speak to him, I'm asking these questions because I don't know how to deal with the racism there. And then I was like, kind of got frustrated myself, like, oh, maybe I'm just the one that always talks about race. Like, you know, am I the race Debbie Downer? You know, like, here we're having a party, woo, and then I'm like, hey, racism, you know. And I'm like, and then I got like worked up and in my head, and I spoke to my mum about it, and she's like my North Star, and she would be like, but that's what you're experiencing, like, and you're trying to talk it through out loud because you're trying to process it, but maybe you're just talking to the wrong people about it.
I mean, oh my God, I know my band is tired of me talking about race. I know, but like,
But it's still your everyday experience.
I'm having such a hard time out here. I went to Paris in February and I played a show. I asked them for some tea, and the person did not want to serve me. And I was about to play a show, and it's crazy too because like you have to sing and dance for them. You got to play the show.
Yeah.
The same people who are disrespecting you, and the person spit in my tea. They spit in my tea, and then everyone is like gaslighting me, like, oh no, it's just weird honey. And they spit in my honey. They spit in my honey. Actually, he didn't want to give me the tea, so he came back with the tea, and it was like a cup of cold water and tea in a tea bag. And then I was like, I could tell he was really mad that he even had to give me the tea. So then I was like scared to ask for the honey, but I had long COVID, so and I had to sing, and I was like, I gotta, you know, I need this tea. And so then he brings me back the honey, and it's like a cup of honey, like this big, like like as big as a bottle, with like spit on top.
Disgusting.
And then it was like, oh, like I'm being dramatic.
Yeah.
And so then I play the show, and like I talk about racism, and you know, afterwards it's like someone said to me, people just want to hear you sing. Like, why are you say, you know, people don't want to hear you talk about that, just sing. And it's like, how can I just sing when I'm like, I'm coming here on this continent from country to country, and I feel like I'm fighting for my life everywhere I go.
Yeah.
Like, so I can't just shut up and sing. Like, I'm trying to like.
Well, that's not, you know, I mean, you say it in the next, you know, I've been on the run from like 5011 emotions. So like 5011 emotions, you know, and that could be, let's take this example of like being on the road and experiencing all these things. You're on the road because it's what pays the bills. What pays the bills is what you need to do. But at the same time, it's like I don't think it's what our ancestors fought for us to just sing songs. Like, imagine if you said to Nina Simone, just sing songs. Oh my God, like, get the fuck out of here. You just wouldn't. That's not, right. That doesn't push, you know, that doesn't make the dent. Like, just sing songs. You're not a minstrel. It's not a minstrel.
Fucking minstrel.
A minstrel show, you know. But then how do you then, okay, so these things, you know, very literal happening in real time. All the time, you know, any not just racism, but you know, life happens, right? And you are an observer of what happens. How do you then take things like that and experiences and those feelings to make music? Where does the output of the processing come out through the music?
Writing the songs is probably like my favorite part of being a musician. I had to warm up to everything else, like even performing. But when I write songs, I feel in control. You ever like have an argument with somebody or something, and then like after it's done, you like replay in your head
all the things you would have said.
So like the songwriting is kind of like that for me, where like me like imagining like winning the argument. Or like, and not just politically, like just anything I'm writing a song about, it makes me feel bigger than the problem.
Yeah.
And I really like that feeling. So it's like, I think that's another reason maybe why I make so much music, because like I think I have like an emotional dependency on the songwriting too, because like sometimes life can make you feel crazy and like you don't know what you're talking about, and so I I validate myself through my songwriting.
And was there like an aspect of capitalism that you wanted to win the argument on in this song?
Hate working. And like working through everything. Like I I had a knee injury like the year I was making North Star, and like I mean bad. Like I couldn't walk on it.
Right.
And I still had to shoot music videos, and I still had a regular job at the time. There's so much stuff, and capitalism kind of makes you feel like even when you're sick, even when you're tired, even when you're grieving, like if you can't show up for work, you're a failure. And like I get mad sometimes because I'm just like, nothing, like no other living thing is like paying rent, or like water is free, and like the earth isn't asking me for rent. Like why are you asking me for rent? And like you know, the more I start to learn about other places, the more I'm like, this shit is some bullshit. Like, you know, when I first came to London, like my very, very first time, I was meeting people and they were like, yo, like my rent is so high, and like coming from New York, like rent is so high. And I'm like, what is that shit? Like, who said you own this piece of land? Like, you know, like, and it sounds like such a simple question, or like elementary, but it's true. Like, why do you own this piece of land that I have to like go to work and sell hours of my life to pay
You
you
for the piece of land that you said that you own.
you don't fucking own this shit. And I mean, even like when you think about like all these like UK race riots, like I think about that shit like, okay, here we are, England. Like you went to Africa and you went to the Caribbean, and you went to Africa and took people from the Caribbean and killed all the indigenous people, and then made the Africans work in the Caribbean, and then you went to India, and like you went all these places and you took these people's shit and you destabilized these countries, and then it's like, don't come here. Well, like you weren't like worried about territory when you were going to other people's shit. You didn't, there wasn't a respect of boundaries and country lines then. So like why respect the country lines now, and like give people their shit back, and they won't be here. They don't want to be here in this cold muggy shit anyway. They want to be back.
It's cold grey day.
You know what I mean? They don't want to be here
Yeah.
any fucking way, but they're here because you've made it so that they have to be here. And I think I just feel so frustrated all the time with like how hard it is to live and stay alive and have necessities, like when it doesn't fucking have to be that way.
Yeah.
And like the more that I travel the world and the more that I see like even like, so I'd be on the TikTok clock app.
Okay, so the times how long you're on TikTok, or?
No, we joke and call it the clock app. I'm talking about TikTok.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, TikTok app, right.
And
Sorry.
like,
I was I was in mum mode then. What the timing of TikTok? Like,
Yeah,
just the TikTok.
Just TikTok, and like I see all these fucking diaspora wars, and I'm like, we're really just fighting over scraps. We're fighting over like, in America we say exceptional Negro. Like we're fighting to be like the exceptional Negro in the imperial core. And to be honest, like in like 2020, I like bought into the diaspora wars. I was like, oh, you don't like me, then I don't like you. And then once I started to like educate myself, I'm like, oh, like we're really just fighting to be the exceptional Negro in the imperial core because of scarcity, because like somebody has to be at the bottom, which
for someone to be at the top.
And so we're fighting who will be of the Black people throughout the diaspora, who will be at the top of this, so that no one has to be at the bottom, because capitalism says that something has to exist at the expense of another. But like, how do we then get capitalism off of our neck if we buy into that? We gotta chip away at this shit, like, cause, or maybe this is morbid, or maybe it just fucking collapses. But like, capitalism is not sustainable. I'm fucking exhausted. Like, I just want to lay the fuck down, and like, I think we all feel that way. Like, and I don't know. I be rambling at shows sometimes. Like, I'm on stage and I'm like, I just want y'all to know I don't want to fucking be here.
It's not you, it's me.
Like, you know, like, I don't want to fucking be here. Like,
yeah. But then is there, I mean, maybe this is capitalism talking, but the artist in you, do you want to be there on your own terms?
I want to play shows when I want to play shows. Yeah.
I think that's fair. That's fair. I was going to say actually about like time, right? Because we're talking, you know, it's a, you know, capitalism, time, they're the mirror of each other, and how we see time, and thinking about like, you know, if you read books about like indigenous communities or, you know, pre-colonized African communities, the idea of time is not what colonizers have introduced to us, and over time, that's something that comes up so much in this song, you know, is the time. I'll call you when I have time, but I can never find the time. Time thinking about time and how shit just passes by. Never worried how I feel, but if I just keep it real, I've been hoping for a little more time. So I just kind of wondered about during the making of the album, your concept of time, because it's kind of like roughly a year in your life, and how you think about time now.
The first time I came to London was November 22. And I came here to play Pitchfork Fest, and I came in to work on this play. I never talk about the play because I'm deeply embarrassed. It was a minstrel show. It was white people beatboxing.
Yeah. What was the play? Who's your play?
It wasn't my play. It wasn't your play.
Yeah.
They hired me to write some songs for it, and I went there and I thought it was gonna be one thing, and then I got there and it was like a mockery. It was white. It was like white people. It was kind of like that break dancing.
Stop it! Like the woman that in the Adidas train. Today we're gonna learn how to break dance.
Yeah.
Stop it! I'm sorry that someone brought you here.
It was heartbreaking.
I'm sorry, but like you filed it,
and I had to work on that. I was here for a month, and my dad was sick, and when I came home, he died, and I didn't get a chance to see him. And so every time it's time for me to come to London, it comes up, and like I can't, like I literally like won't pack until like an hours before the flight.
Yeah, because of the association.
Like deeply avoidant. And it made me like hyper aware of like how vulnerable life is, and how everybody has like this like invisible expiration date. There's so many times in everybody's life where there's people that you love that you can't get to because you've got to work, or like birthdays you've got to miss, or holidays you've got to miss, or because you've got to work, and or just time for yourself. Like there's times like maybe you gotta go to the dentist, you keep putting it off because you gotta work, you know, and like now your cavity turns into a root canal when it could have just been a filling, but you had to work. Like there's so much neglect of the really important things because there's like an industry of on time. The industrialization of time, and I think I have like a deep resentment for that, cause like I think about my own life too, and like how I'm not gonna be here forever, and like I don't even get to live the life I really want to live, cause I have to survive.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of us are living the lives we really want to live, because you know.
I was thinking about like micro time. I remember someone when I had a kid and I was like still trying to do all of the answering emails, getting back to work, and I asked somebody how they did it, and he was like, I have 3 kids, and I was like, how the hell have you just made 3 albums and you've got 3 kids and da da da. He was like, micro time. I just do little bits on the bus, little bits here, and that's how we use micro time. But then it's like as she's grown older, the idea of me doing micro time on to send a quick email or to quickly do this feels irrelevant, because the micro time, to me, the micro time now should be spent with her. It's the micro time of sitting, actually, you're having breakfast, let's just sit down and read a book. Let me just quickly do your hair. All right, cool, let's have a little quick playtime. You know, that it's changed of me wanting micro time to be like, oh, I got to get things done, I still need to work, to the micro time being more important about her. And I didn't even notice that shift, it just sort of happened naturally.
Micro time, I feel like, has caused me to be like incredibly unpresent for my life. Like I'm working all the time. Like I could be with my partner and we're sitting on the couch and we're watching TV, and I'm also working in my head. Like I'm working all the time. Because like I've gotten to this point where I can make a living off of my music, but I can't necessarily stop. If I stop, it all falls apart. I don't have enough saved up, I guess, to like take me into retirement. I'm not in my 20s anymore. I need to think about retirement. And so it's like my survival in this music industry requires me to be like incredibly ambitious. Unless I'm gonna have to like figure something else out. So I'm always working, you know?
What comes up is towards the end of the song, it is the being present, you know. It is being, you know, maybe this is all we got to be. Maybe now is all we'll ever have. Maybe we should make it as good as we can. And maybe we should hold on as long as we can, as long as we can. So it's that kind of idea of, but we're here in the now.
Yeah, I'm like determined to like be okay. You know, I had this interview when I was in Sweden. This man interviewed me, and I find, especially with like old white men in Europe, they're like always trying to like tell me how hard it is to be a black woman in America.
Stop it.
Tell me how hard you have to struggle and how miserable you are. I mean, really, you know. And so he's like, so it must be hard to be free as a black person in America. And I'm like, I don't think that I'm not free. And he was like, how is that possible? So I was explaining to him, like, you know, a rabbit is always being hunted by like hawks, foxes,
Humans.
yeah, shit that's gonna eat it. But I don't think that a rabbit is not free because a rabbit is often in danger. Or I think if a rabbit could talk, he'd probably tell you he was free. He's just maybe oppressed. But I don't think that oppression and freedom are mutually exclusive. And I think that in this life, in the human experience, no matter what race you are, pain is inevitable, but joy is inevitable. And I'm determined to surrender to the waves of my life, the joy and the pain, and to know that they'll switch in and out. I mean, again, Frankie Beverly, they got that song "Joy and Pain," and they're both one and the same. Like they they're married to each other, and that's life. So when we do get the moments to be with our loved ones, be there, be present, take it in, hold it, make memories, take pictures. None of it is permanent, the good and the bad. So it's like, hold it, Yeah.
I cried a little bit, going deep into the album, and it was on another song. But I feel like I should say from that what you just said, and it feels like good should be coming.
Yeah.
I really love that line, and it feels like good should be coming. But I cried when on the song Yvette's cooking show, you said, your dad's left the world, but the world hasn't stopped. And I just thought that was a really, made me sad, but it also was a very real statement. Somebody has left the world, and they were your world, but the world hasn't stopped. And I just, I don't know, I don't know why it upset me, but made me.
I
It's
had a
just confronting the
friend.
truth.
I had a friend who they had a parent who died, and when my dad died, I had a lot of people whose parents have died reach out. When I was 22, I had a one of my best friends died, and it felt like such a fluke. Obviously, I grieved. It changed me, but it felt like such a fluke. Because we were 22. That it came and it went. But you will have a death in your life that introduces you to your own mortality, that shifts your world. There are people in your life that like are such a fundamental part of who you are that when they die, a part of you will die. There are people that you have inside jokes with, and a special language that only you two speak. And when that person goes, you'll never access that part of yourself again. There'll be people that don't know why this is funny, and only this person would know why that's funny. And people who only, no one knows me like my dad. My dad was there from the beginning of my life, and I, there are parts of myself that I'll never have to explain to him. Parts of myself that I inherited from him. Parts of myself that he understood better than me because they were with him first. And I had this friend, and his dad died, and he said he went through a period of anger because nothing stopped. Like this big thing happened, and life went on as usual. And I was like, wow, like finally somebody who understands what I'm going through. And I think that like we live in a world that is like always trying to avoid the conversation of death, the conversation of grief. You go to a funeral, people call you for like the first week after, and then they're like, please stop talking about it. You know, it becomes like a faux pas.
Because it makes them confront their own immortality as well, or the mortality
Yeah.
around them.
And like, you haven't even began the grief process until months, maybe a year later. When my dad was finally buried, it took 2 weeks to bury him. I remember like when I finally got home from his funeral, like that's when I was like, oh my God, he's dead. And I remember I was going to take a shower, and it like dawned on me that he had passed. And I had the most extreme like anxiety attack, and I felt the urge to go get him. I gotta go get it. I gotta go get him. And I couldn't, and like to like calm my body down, like, and then I went through months of like just being afraid of that feeling of like of like complete panic, like no 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 no, like this, like, and I guess like that's why I say when I had tenfold, it was the process of surrender of like, there's nothing I can do but experience this. There's nothing, no one can save me from this. I can't save him from this. This is just, and this will happen to me too. And
maybe that's the bit that got me in the line that this will that happen to me too.
it's everyone's fate. And but that's what I think makes life so beautiful, and makes like living from a place of trying to be loving so important, because it's like we all have this very like vulnerable, limited life, and there's so many institutions and things in place where like you can't even enjoy it. People can't even enjoy their lives. These small vulnerable time periods that we have, and like there are people in this world that are having such a hard time with life, they want to take their own lives. Like this is such an extreme experience, the human experience, and like we gotta talk about the elephant in the room, and we gotta like, my God, this is hard. This is so hard, and before you know it, it's over. So like, and I think over the past 2 years, I've become like very, very aware of that, and trying to move in that awareness and trying to let it soften me. It's a crazy process.
That's what I love about the album, you know. It's a confrontation of life, but it's a celebration of life as it is. And even the affirmations that come up throughout the whole album. See, the beautiful thing about me is every little beautiful thing, or I'm superb, you know, like that, you know. And I like their affirmations that, you know, they make me laugh, or you want to hear them as well. And I just think it's you know, you are an artist of our time, and I feel frustrated that maybe there's, I mean, fuck them anyway, but like I feel frustrated that there were journalists that would come to a show and misunderstand it, or misunderstand what, I know what you're here to do, I know what you're here for. I know when we read books about legacy of music where you'll be, because of it's so important what you're doing, but sometimes people don't understand, you know, they don't understand it in the now, but they'll understand it later. And I guess I wanted to know, you know, you going on this journey in the last couple of years, but on the other side of where you're at now, or a different side, sorry, not the other side, what is bringing you joy?
Sometimes I think I'm going to be like hardened by life,
What is making you softer?
and it's making me softer. I'm staying in Hackney right now, and I went to, like, I found a little like Caribbean shop, and again, like, it's, I think because of the internet, there's like so much fighting. I have to keep bringing up these diaspora words because they're just so insane to me. And I think a younger me would have like been like, yeah, these people don't like me, those people don't like me. And I'm like, no, my urge to love is, so I went to this Caribbean shop, and since black girl, she sold me some patties, and I was just like, hi.
Because don't you know why I'm cracking up? It's because I'm sorry. Because I had this conversation the other day. Like the Caribbean, like going to get some Caribbean food, it's an experience.
Oh, I know.
But now I love it. So yeah, you said hi.
And like, and you know, a little bit about me. So I'm American. Half of my family is Black American from South Carolina. The other half of my family is from Barbados. And so I think that also gives me like this vantage point in all of it, because I understand like immigrant culture. I understand what it means to be a Black American, like 500 years in America. I understand what it means to be Caribbean. Like I have and so I was just like, man, like I can't wait till we all just, I hope for that like, because you know, even in music, you can see that we love each other even though we're fighting. Like that's why I experiment with lovers rock so much, because it's like, it's this marriage of like reggae and R&B, and it reminds me of who I am in this world as someone who is a Black American, as someone who is Caribbean, and like
Perfect.
it feels like me. And you hear it all the time. You know, like you hear Afro beats in America more. You hear when you hear the house music and Amapiano, like it. We have an admiration for each other, but we're just like fighting to be the number one Black people in the imperial core. And like once we get over that, we can focus more on each other, and that brings me joy.
Yeah. So when you said hi, what did she say?
Hi.
Hi.
And like we were just like vibing.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like I felt safe.
Yeah.
And I had just come from Norway and Sweden when I did not feel safe.
And that interaction.
It felt good.
Yeah. And also I think dispelling the stereotype of what you would get in a Caribbean shop. That's why I started cracking up, because I was like, I don't know where this is going. Like, hi, do you want your patty or not? Like, you know, but to get the hi back in that moment, that's beautiful.
It was cool, you know, like, and also, you know, I don't mind when you go, you know, like you go to Flatbush, you know, or somewhere on Fulton Street, you go for a patty shop, or you go to get doubles, like I don't mind that the person's gonna have an attitude, because the food is gonna be
food's gonna be dry. If you're too nice, what you're hiding? Nah, you're hiding something. The food, 100%. If there's no attitude, the food is, I'm scared.
And I also think the attitude, comes from not wanting to work. Like people in the service industry have attitudes because they don't want to work, and they don't want to serve you, and in capitalistic societies and the societies in the imperial core, we think that service jobs means that you're lesser than, you know, that, and they get subjected to that sort of treatment. And so I'd have an attitude too, you know?
And the food would be good, I'm sure.
Yeah, you know, and the food would be good. Another thing that brings me joy is I have a, he's not really my nephew, but he's basically my nephew. My friend's son, he's 5.
Yeah.
And I don't know, he just came to mind right now for some reason.
Well, the mind of a 5-year-old, you know, is...
I mean, because he just has this big, like, every tooth in his mouth smile. And I talked to him yesterday on FaceTime, and I have a lot of love in my life.
Yeah.
I have a
Feel
lot
it.
of love in my life.
You see it.
So I always have joy. Like, even in if I have a bad day, like, somebody's gonna like love on me.
Yeah.
I'm alright. And so there's a lot of joy in my life too.
Yeah.
For that reason.
I was thinking, well, I'll pick a line to leave people with, and you can pick a line to leave people with. But from what you said, and it feel like you should be loving on me. That would be the line that I'm going to leave people with. That we should be like loving on each other. And it just reminds me of the contrast and the duality of the album, to feel life, but to love the life that we're in. What line would you leave people with from the song?
The bills don't get paid by themselves. Probably that.
The bills
line.
don't get paid by themselves, and they never ask me if I'm well. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Pleasure.